All right, and welcome to Hattrick Sports Talk. I am here with my good buddy Cole Hinkel. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, just to update you guys on what we're doing, we're in the summer months now, and basically we want to get more content out to you guys. If you've seen our work on Instagram, even on Twitter, you can follow us there at Hattrick UWave. On our Facebook pages as well. We've tried to put more content out there for you. That was one of our goals starting into the summer months now. And one of them also was to get this man in front of you as well involved, Cole Hinkle. We wanted to do more podcasts for you guys. So this week you're going to get this show with me and Cole today. Tomorrow, me, Shane, and Brandon, as usual, is tomorrow. So you're going to get two pods every week, more than likely. More content for you guys, more stuff for you all to interact with. So we hope you enjoy that. Share, like, and let us know if you have any other suggestions of content you want to see. We're posting stuff from some of our older shows. If there's any fun moments that you want us to post on our socials, let us know as well. So more content, more stuff. So how do you feel about us doing this pod call?
I'm excited. Like you said, it's good to get more content out there for the viewers, but it's also fun for me to be able to come on the show and get back to doing some of this debates that you and me seem to be having. So
Yeah.
it'll be fun. I'm glad to be on the show and glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's get started. All right, so we're beginning with Kyrie Irving. Stephen Bonnie of the New York Daily News reported that Kyrie Irving, on a recent group chat with teammates, said that he pushed teammates to skip the Orlando restart, but also suggested the players should start their own league. All right, let me begin on this because, look, I respect what Kyrie Irving is doing here. I don't think you can not respect what he's trying to do when you have 80 players in a call last week. He had 80 players, NBA and WNBA, on a call last week. You cannot tell me that you can't respect what he's trying to do when he has 80 people on a call, right? You just can't. But I get where he's coming from with the social justice, social reform thing. I get it. I understand that. I respect it. But at the same time, I think when this report came out yesterday that he wants to do a new league, that I was like, that's way out left field. In the NBA, as you and I know, and this is a huge reason why I think we love it as much as we do, is because it's the most progressive league in America. The NFL is not progressive as the NBA is. The MLB for sure is not, as we've seen for the last week. But they are working on the proposal now, even more now, today, as we are recording this, I should say. But the NBA is more progressive. Over the last 5 years, they've done a lot of work on Black Lives Matter, more than many other leagues. And, that's great. But that's part of why we like it. But Kyrie is acting like this is the NFL, or more specifically the MLB, where nothing's happening, nothing's getting done. And that's just not correct, because this league is clearly player focused. Kyrie is missing the boat on this sense for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I think the other thing that we've heard Kyrie mention in the last couple weeks is that he wants to kind of skip out on this restart of the league. You know what I mean? And like you said, I understand it's for a bigger cause. It's for the social justice and social reform. But I think also what he's losing in this is his platform. I think he needs to understand that his platform is much greater when he is getting interviewed by TNT on way more platforms where he can get the message out that he's trying to get out rather than skipping it and maybe doing his own side thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a little podcast or a little TV show or however he wants to do it. I haven't
I mean,
seen any
this
specific.
seems like private conversation. This is part of the weirdness about this is clearly all private information, yet players are leaking it, and players like Kevin Durant aren't happy that he's acting this way. Ryan Russillo of The Ringer reported that yesterday. It's just I don't he just seems to I think again, we understand where he's coming from, but it doesn't make sense in the sense that this is not a league that doesn't work towards social reform or doesn't work to work alongside the players. Why do you think the NBA was so successful at making sure Orlando works? They worked in conjunction. Adam Silver worked in conjunction with guys like Chris Paul, LeBron James. All these big stars that really, are the fabric of the league. And that was started, by Silver and by David Stern. This is what the league is. It's player focused, which makes these labor negotiations somewhat easier, especially this situation. That's what I'm frustrated with. It's like, I get where he's coming from, but you can't tell me this league is not at the forefront of this.
And to piggyback off of that, like you're saying, the league does such a good job. Like you're saying, it's the most progressive league. That platform is going to be greater. Like what I'm saying anyway, that platform is going to be so much greater than anything else, just because of the way the league markets these players and the way the league puts these players' messages out. I think the thing with Kyrie is, I think what he's always tried to do, going back to even him being a quote-unquote flat earther or whatever, I think it's more or less him just challenging the status quo. You know what I mean? I think and that's not – I'm saying that in a good way. It's good for him and to try and influence people to think outside of the box, per se. You know what I mean? You don't just want to go with what people are telling you, and I understand what he's trying to do. And I think more or less of this is him just trying to get people to like you said, discuss these things and spread kind of a bigger message, but more or less just open up these discussions and these debates for people to have. He's going about it in a little bit of a awkward, I think, kind of wrong way, like we're saying. But I think, like I said, going back to the flat earther thing, I don't think he actually believes some of these things or he really wants to do some of these things, but more or less just get these debates and this kind of narrative going, right, so that way people can have their own point of views, not just follow everything else.
I just don't really like. It doesn't feel like he's all in with what the NBA is doing, though. It's one of these, like, with this situation, like, I don't, as Austin Rivers said, I don't see why they can't play and focus on social justice reform. That platform of itself in Orlando is going to be so big. Exactly. They can do so much with that. That's a breeding ground to talk about those issues, whether it's in pregame or postgame press conferences, especially where they do talk about these issues openly there. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It's like, is he not understanding what this league's message is and what it's about? Because I feel like he's lost it.
I couldn't agree more. I just think that platform, when they're going to be in Orlando, that's going to be one of the only things that's on. If you want to get a message out, that's the time. You're going to be in front of dozens of cameras and everything, where you can spread that message. I think the other thing Kyrie misses is, like you said, in this league where they've started to market players and now they're starting to pay players more, is he keeps talking about maybe not to play basketball, you know what I mean? This kind of thing where he's talking about maybe sitting out or whatever. You're going to lose money where you can use – you're getting paid millions of dollars where you can use some of that money to impact these causes that you're
Look at what LeBron has done. I mean, I know he's probably not the biggest fan of LeBron, and that also I know people have said that's probably why. Honestly, that's probably not why. It's just a whole different thing, as we're mentioning. But it's like, look at what he's done with the I Promise School. Look at what he's done for social reform. And we talked about it on the show 2 weeks ago. It doesn't make a lot of sense what he's doing. And the whole new league thing, I researched it yesterday. That's impossible. I mean, that's hard with antitrust laws and all this stuff. The agents tried to do it in 2011 with that lockout. They couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, it can't happen.
It's ridiculous to me. It's crazy. Again, I understand what he's trying to do, but the one he said, a new league, that freaked me out. I was like, okay, this is too much, you know?
I'm with you there.
All right, and biggest part of our show for today is the NBA Awards. We're going to go through our awards, all the major awards, do our All-NBA teams, as the season is obviously basically quantifiably over at this point, other than the 8 games, which doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so let's see. There we go. There we go. It glitched out for a moment. My apologies. Okay, so MVP, who do you have?
I went with Giannis also.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty consensus, I think.
Yeah.
That's about as as surefire as you can get. I think it's pretty much a lock. I mean, you could make the argument for LeBron, but I just think the talent surrounding Giannis is so much less. Um,
Hmm.
so
I
that's why I
so
lean that
so
way.
here's my thing though. If we played the last 30 games of the season, did LeBron have a serious case potentially after the 30 games?
I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, like I said, I think you can make the argument for LeBron. I just don't see. I'm just looking at team talent too. That to me,
Huh.
that's what plays a lot into MVP. And like I said, I just think Giannis is playing. He doesn't have Anthony Davis. You know what I mean? He
Hmm.
doesn't have that real bona fide star next to him. That's why I lean that way. LeBron's stats have been really good, and I think a lot of LeBron's accolades this year, or not accolades, but stats and stuff, attribute to having that year off. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, pretty much a year off with the playoffs last year. Yeah.
exactly. I think he's really refreshed. That's also probably why I lean towards Giannis, is because he was deep in the playoffs last year too and still performed at a really high level. So
Yeah, I think that's a really great point that you keep bringing up. It's because I think this is probably one of his best years of his career just as a whole. I mean,
yeah.
him playing at this level at this age is just ridiculous. But I think you're right. It's definitely a huge reason why.
Hmm.
Rookie of the year, John Morant.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty simple. That could have changed with Zion, but at the same time, he would have played about 45, 50 games. Ja would have played about maybe 75. I think that alone.
Yeah, not enough games for me, but then you factor in also that Jaws got his team in a playoff spot, is when we were expecting nothing from the Grizzlies, is also huge. So
Yeah. What do you like about John Morant's game? What stood out to you this year?
um I think what impressed me more or less was his ability to get others involved. I think he's a very efficient like point guard in the fact that he really gets his teammates involved. I was more expecting him to be kind of an explosive scorer out of college, maybe more similar to Westbrook. Not that Westbrook doesn't get his teammates involved. I mean, I think you and me differ on that. I think Westbrook does get his teammates involved, but I think I was expecting less of that from Ja. I was
Hmm.
expecting more of, kind of one-on-one isolation, but he really seems to be able to drive and dish pretty well, which is
Hmm.
that part of his game has impressed me this year. I mean, obviously, when you talk about a guy like that, you talk about energy level and stuff like that. Confidence, which is that's why he's exciting to watch to me, is because of the kind of anger that he plays with. But more or less getting the other guys involved, because he's got a good young couple pieces around him. Dylan
Jaren
Brooks,
Jackson Jr., Brandon
Triple
Clark, for
J,
example.
Brandon Clark, yeah. So I mean, they're building a good young core, and I think the more he gets those guys involved, the less of the load he'll have to shoulder. You know what I mean? And that can help him kind of stray away from, like I said, kind of a Westbrook type role where it's kind of all on his shoulders.
Yeah. I really liked his game this year, but I loved watching the Grizzlies this year. I had a really fun time watching them this year. Just I love seeing this young team grow. They have a potential in the next 5 years to really show out, especially as this league changes to become more
They
of a
do.
younger league.
They were really exciting, more than just a league pass team. You know what I mean? That you
Yeah.
kind of just watch on a Thursday night, but yeah, I really enjoy this team, and I think they got, like I said, young potential there. That's, I think, is going to be a problem in the West for a while if they can keep those core pieces together.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, if Zion did play a couple more games, are you willing to, like? Because
It,
for
it,
me, I'm not even willing to like
if
budge
he it,
over
again, if he played
willing.
about 75, if he played a full season, Zion would have won. There's no question.
You
But
think just based off of the hype though, or just
no, I actually
Let
think
let let's say seeding stays the same, where Grizzlies are still in the eighth spot. Zion's, what are they, 10th?
yeah.
So let's say it stays that way. Are you still willing to?
If let's say they both play about 75, 80 games, Zion would have won. And I honestly, and this is not just like, oh, it's like, oh, people would have picked Ja or whatever, or most people would have picked Ja. No, I'm telling you, the media would have taken Zion. There's no
Would
question.
would you have though?
Yes, I would
You
have.
you would have.
I think that him, and we've obviously, it's a small sample size, and obviously there's so much hype around him. I bought into it. I'm a Zion head now. I
Yeah,
love Zion, but I'll be honest. I just think you can't look at his skill set. You can't look at the impact he would have had. I mean, look, if he played a full season, you would have had Brandon Ingram, who was incredible. Jackson Hayes as another young player who's still developing, right? Lonzo was a lot better in the second half of the season than he was in the first half.
I
I
think
think
that
if he played a full season,
I think
and
that's
Lonzo would have,
attributed to Zion too.
right.
I think Lonzo stepping up is because of Zion.
Right, absolutely. I think Lonzo's much better when Zion's on the floor for sure. So I do think that no matter how the standings would have looked, and if you look even down my list, there's a few players that didn't even make the playoffs that are on this list. But I really think Zion would have won, no question, by the media. I don't think it would have been close.
It's fair.
But you don't feel the same way?
No, if the standings were to stay the same, I'd lean towards Ja. I think just
Mm-hmm.
because of uh really what we were expecting from Memphis was bottom of the standings, and I think he's got pieces there. But I don't think they equate to what the Pelicans have. I think Brandon Ingram was closer towards being a finished product much more than Triple J, Jaren Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
or Brandon Clark or
Brandon Clark
Dylan
is still in
Brooks.
the developmental stage, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't get
So
too many minutes.
I mean, you're talking about pieces that are just closer to a finished, way closer to a finished product for me than Zion had with him. And New Orleans did a good job of going out and getting some veterans too to help out. Like JJ Redick and stuff like that. So I mean, to me, if the standings stay the same, I'm just not willing to take wins away from a guy when
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
he's still putting up excellent numbers and his team's in a better spot. That to me is worth more in this type of award system than if let's say I were to build around a guy, you know what I mean, then I'm
Yeah.
taking. But
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. Defensive Player of the Year, I went Anthony Davis. Look, you could take Giannis. He won MVP. I'm going to change it up and give AD the award. I have a tough time with Defensive Player of the Year. I think it's changed over time, right? It was much easier back in, 2011, 2012, where defense still felt like much more a priority. Like, I had a
yeah,
tough time with this award because it's not the same, right? It's not the same as it used to be. This is such more of an offensive centric league, of course, with the three ball. Defense doesn't seem as important. I mean, you have guys like Trae Young who really don't have much in terms of defense, but they're still like incredible players. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, exactly. I think this award has gotten hard to, like you said, kind of hard to judge talent of, because I think there's also less players that are playing on the defensive end, like you said, less willing to until, let's say, the last 8 minutes of the game. You know what I mean? They're just, like you said, the league is transitioning to more offensive uh, settings, But for me, I went Giannis here, and I think just because I think he offers a little bit more versatility than AD. He can guard a little bit smaller guys. His team also was 4 points higher on a defensive rating side. So the Bucks were the best overall defensive team. So I think you award that to him being the main cog in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think AD's a close second because he was the main cog for his team defensively, and I think that was impressive for him to kind of speak up at the beginning of the year and say he wanted to be defensive player of the year and really backed it up. Because like we said, a lot of guys don't play defense nowadays, but I think it would be cool to see Giannis win both these just because he would be the only one since Hakeem and MJ have done it. So there
Wow.
would be
Yeah.
three total that have won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. So that would be cool to see.
Yeah.
But I could see the argument for either or here.
Going back to the Bucks, they easily could have won 70 games.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be lost in history now, in the sense that they probably could have been the third or fourth greatest team of all time in terms of regular season record wise.
hmm
But now I don't know if people are going to be looking back at this season and thinking, oh, we're going to give them that credit that they probably, or they were on pace to win 70.
Yeah, I'm sure that's frustrating for them. It's frustrating for guys like you and me who really follow the NBA hard because, we, like you said, we lose some of these teams in history. And I think this was also a year that we kind of expected the Bucks to take a step back. I thought we thought they were going to win the East, but losing a piece like Malcolm Brogdon and stuff, we were kind of unsure if Middleton would have the same kind of year that he did. So we didn't really know what to expect. I didn't expect them to be in the chase for 70. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to be chasing the Warriors record, and they were going to be close. But yeah, I think this overall was a really efficient team that didn't get a whole lot of notice for being that efficient, and it's probably due to the lack of competition in the Eastern Conference.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's an accomplishment that's going to be lost, and it's a little bit upsetting. I think this whole year, regular season wise, is going to be a little bit lost just because of the coronavirus, though. It's going to be a little bit of a lopsided year, but there's bigger things that we had to deal with. So
Oh, for sure. Definitely. But yeah, I think the whole 70 games thing should be important. But again, with it being in the East, I'm not sure how viable that would have been, especially the playoffs. We're going to see it in Orlando when we get to the playoffs. It's going to be one of those things where, I mean, there's just so much talent in the West. It's going to be tough for, I mean, I think more than likely the Bucks find a way to get to the NBA Finals, but it's going to be tough whoever they match up with in the West.
yeah,
So it kind of depends if they win the title. And I really don't think this is one of these years where the title gets devalued at all. It shouldn't be. So whoever wins it will deserve it, unless some other things happen with the coronavirus. But I'm sure these players, as we've been said with Jared Dudley, they're going to protect LeBron and AD with their lives
yeah.
there. So yeah, I don't think the award or excuse me, the NBA Finals are going to be really devalued with this system. Do you feel that way?
Um, that's what I was gonna kind of ask you. I know you just kind of spoke on it, but I don't know that we're gonna be able to get the best out of these guys being in a hotel for 3 months in Orlando, away from their families and all that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the level of play? Just because me and you, if I were to travel and I were to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks, I get a little
Yeah.
stale. It gets a little stale. So to me, it might be a little bit of a thing where it's kind of like, maybe some guys were burned out this year when we look back on it. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if devalue is the right word. Maybe just, yeah, I guess it is the right word. I mean, that because I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I
It's
don't
hard to
feel
say.
that way though.
You don't.
No, I don't. I think the only way that it's devalued, and I hope to God this doesn't happen, but the only way that it gets devalued is if so many guys test positive that we're just that it's not the same systems or rosters at all. That's the
Yeah.
only way. That's the only argument. So I guess it's almost to be determined in that way because we just don't know, how that setup is going to look, how many players are going to be testing positive, you know, and all that stuff. So I think it also depends on that. That's something that people haven't talked about, but I really don't think so. I think it would be unfair after playing 50 some games to just say that the season is devalued.
Yeah, I'm more or less. I'm just worried about level of play. No fans. I'm sure. These guys are paid professionals. They know what they're doing. They're going to be going hard. I'm not necessarily worried about that, but I do wonder how much fans and refereeing I think will be different without the fans there. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that has something to play with it. But I think you make a really good point as far as we kind of have to wait on it to see if some of these guys do test positive, because then it depletes some of the rosters. Then you're right, it really does take away from some of it. That's something I haven't thought about really. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a wait and see type of thing, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think Orlando's gonna be really fun, but I mean, look at how the Lakers are looking at this. As I mentioned, what Dudley's been saying, the Lakers are looking at this and saying, "Look, if we win this thing, we won the thing." And I
Yeah,
think like the Bucks, the Clippers, the Raptors, all these guys in those big hotels that I don't know why Shams talked about the hotels. That was weird. But all these teams that are up there in the top 4 or 5 are going to care. And they're
Yeah,
going to want to win.
I think probably once it gets down to it, I think the struggle you're going to have is in the first couple of series. I think once it gets down to it, though, and you're in the Eastern Conference, Western Conference Finals, I think it'll ramp up a little bit just because I think it justifies, kind of the weight and the struggle that people have been going through. You know what I mean? If you win it, then it really does kind of justify, maybe not the right word, but it
Yeah.
signifies that struggle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That a lot of these guys were going through and training at their houses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
I think, but I honestly do feel like it's a wait and see approach. But for right now, I do think it would be unfair to say that the NBA Finals is devalued just because of something that was out of their control.
Yeah.
I just don't
It's
see
fair.
it. All right, let's go 6-man. I had a tough time with 6-man. I went with Lou Will. What did you have for 6-man?
I went Dennis Schroeder.
All right, that's a good call.
Yeah.
I loved OKC this year as a whole. Chris Paul was a great addition, but this team was a lot better than we expected as a whole.
Yeah, a lot better. And that's kind of why I gave the nod to Schroeder here, because a guy coming off the bench, and I think that 3-guard set that they implemented really was like a huge surprise benefit for this team. Not a lot of teams go small, like that small, 3-point guards on the floor with Shea and CP3, but I think that 3-guard set and Schroeder's numbers, and that combined with OKC's success, really, that's what made me lean this way. Also, I wanted to kind of differ from Lou Will and Montrezl Harrell just because of the fact that I view those two as kind of a tandem. You know what I mean? It's a little bit hard for me to decipher one from another, which is why also I kind of lean that way. They're probably either one of those, Montrez or Lou, you are probably a little bit more of a 6-man worthy. But I just think that 3-guard set that I'm talking about that OKC kind of implemented with Schroeder coming off the bench really shocked me with the success that they had. So that's why I kind of lean that way.
Yeah, I had a tough time with this award. I think you make a really good case for Schroeder. I just had a tough time with it because, I mean, the Clippers, obviously with Will and Harold, they're obviously always candidates for the award. But it's tough to kind of pick because, I mean, it can really depend on team success. But I do think you're kind of swaying me a little bit. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's definitely a good argument for Schroeder.
Yeah, it's just, for me, like you said, you can't weigh it a whole lot on team success, but this award has gotten really hard to judge just because of the fact that a lot of these guys now, like Lou Will and Montrez, are starting to finish games, and Schroeder was finishing games that last couple minutes for OKC, with that 3-guard set, their crunch time lineup. So it's becoming more and more hard to decipher these type of guys. He might come off the bench, but if he's playing minutes like a starter, it's a little bit hard to judge. But
it was a weird award. Most improved. Who did you have?
I went Brandon Ingram.
Ooh, I went to Devontae Graham. Why did you go Brandon Ingram for you?
I think just the leap in numbers, the leap in him having to kind of be the guy when he was in LA, he kind of got lost in the mix. I know you and me have had that talk where I think he was just getting kind of lost in LeBron's shadow. And I think here with Zion out the first half of the year too, he really had to step up and kind of be the guy, and his numbers were outstanding. He's always been able to score the ball, and I think this is finally the year he really popped. He was an all-star. He's, going to get paid like an all-star soon. This is a guy I'm just really happy for, and was really high on coming out of college, and I didn't want him to get lost in the fold of that whole kind of LA scenery and everything too. I know it's hard for some of those young guys.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Because I've always found that weird. I mean, obviously LeBron there adds to the spectacle of it, but for guys like Ingram and Lonzo, they struggled in LA. Why do you think this is something that happens so often? I mean, even a guy like D'Angelo Russell struggled there. There was obviously other reasons, but Why do you think LA is so tough for these young players to adjust to?
It's just a lot more pressure, and I say that vaguely, but it's just you're you're around media a lot more. You're in the spotlight a lot more. A lot of your games are broadcasted. You're really put in the spotlight as far as you know you're gonna be judged for just about everything. And I think also being in LA, what is critical about that is you're being watched off the court too. It's not just your performance. You're being watched off the court, whether it's getting into trouble, fashion, whatever. So there's a lot of extra kind of stigma and hype that comes with just being in LA. Where if you remove yourself from that scenery, probably a little bit of a refresh button for guys like Lonzo and Brandon Ingram, where they can kind of restart and get away from that kind of spotlight. But also, I've said this to you before, and you may or may not agree with it, but I think being a young guy on LeBron's team has always been hard. It's always been
No,
something
it's
where,
tough. It's hard because he likes guys that are older. He likes guys with experience. He's at that point now in his career where
yeah,
he's all about, like, why is Rondo on the team?
yeah.
Rondo is a guy that's, has experience, knows how to play in clutch moments. That's what he likes. He doesn't like younger guys. He wants guys with playoff experience because he's at that point of his career
And
where he
that's
wants
fair.
to compete for
That's
titles.
fair. He wants to win now, and I don't blame him for that. You know what I mean? It's just he's been in that win now mode for the last couple of years, and that's why some of these younger pieces and some of these teams have kind of folded, and it's not good to see, but it's just kind of the business. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I went with Devontae Graham. This is a little fantasy bias. I had him on my fantasy team. But here's the deal, man. This guy went from 4.7 points to 18.2 and 2.6 to 7.5. This is actually assists per game. My bad. But here's the thing. This Hornets team has almost nothing going for it. Almost nothing. But this season, this Hornets team was fun. Like, I legitimately enjoyed sitting down and watching the Hornets because I felt like, okay, you had Terry Rozier there. Devontae Graham played fantastic. Yes, he teared off a bit, towards the end of the coronavirus, but this team had close games. I mean, this team had more often than not games that finished, 10 points or less. They were competitive. Yeah, they weren't going to win those games, but they were competitive. And a huge reason why is obviously Terry Rozier, but I also think Devontae Graham is a huge reason for that as well. Because I think his improvement made that team play just a whole lot better as a whole.
Well, I'll first start by saying I'm glad you got entertainment out of this team because you're probably one of the only people in the whole world that got entertainment out of watching this team. But I think the point you make that holds the most value is Devontae Graham was the lone bright spot for this team. Rozier, I think, got overpaid. He's a nice, piece to have, but it's not gonna win you games. This is a young guy that Devontae Graham being that can, you can start saying, okay, we have some pieces for the future, where this Hornets team has been kind of lost in their direction the last couple of years. They had aging veterans with huge contracts. I think Nick Batum's still on one or 2 years on
Yeah.
that team. Once they clear up some of this cap, they can start to really rebuild and move forward. This guy did make a huge jump, especially from what we were used to seeing. Like you're saying, towards the end of the year, he did kind of tailor off a little bit and kind of slow down. But it's probably more or less because game plans, become more advanced and more scouting reports on a guy like this. And if he's the only guy on the team that you really have to worry about, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But he seemed to really handle a bigger role, and he was, to me, the one fun player on this team to watch.
Yeah, I really think they're going to be focusing long term on this Rozier Graham combo. I think it would be beneficial to them to focus on that. I also think that part of it was, I mean, he was playing literally 2 minutes per game last season. I think I think it was about 2-3 minutes, and then they bumped him up to 30. Right. I think
Yeah.
one of the things, them losing Kemba, I think was the best thing to happen to this organization. Because I feel like now they can sort of reset and say, if they paid Kemba, they would have been in luxury tax like heck for years.
Yeah.
So they had to reset, and they need a guy, like they needed, as you said, like a bright spot to really start to say, okay, we can build around these pieces. And I think Graham and Rozier, but Graham especially, is that starting pieces. And then we'll see what happens with the contracts as they move along.
I agree. Just one little tidbit I want to throw in there. One guy I'm looking forward to seeing next year, because this Charlotte team is pretty much done. I want to see what Malik Monk does. He got suspended. I think that's a guy that can make this type of leap with increased minutes. I think that's kind of another bright spot that they have kind of in their back pocket there.
I'm worried about Monk because I mean the PEDs thing, like I was like, oh God, really? Like I wasn't happy about that. But I also think that, yeah, I think he played a lot better this year. But I also feel like he was that player this year that needed to make that leap. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how confident I am with him yet. Like, he's a good piece to that young core. But right now, I think Devontae Graham is just a lot more valuable at this moment than
Oh,
Monk.
yeah, no, yeah, I think right now he's more valuable. I'm just saying next year I think Monk is going to make this jump. And that's just personal, bias probably, because I like the kid in college and I think he can score pretty good. And I think maybe he just needed a couple years to adapt, coming out of Kentucky pretty young. So I'm looking forward to him being kind of the Devontae Graham of next year for that team. Like you say, we're trending towards a rebuild. So I want to see what some of their younger guys have. And I think that's a guy that can make this kind of jump.
Credit to James Borrego, by the way. I mean, my God, he came into this job basically with nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at what he's done with that team. It's impressive.
Yeah, it is.
There's literally nothing, and he's found a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And really connect with his players as well, which we've seen, throughout this whole period with their virtual meetings and stuff like that. Who is your coach of the year?
Tying into my Dennis Schroeder kind of fandom, I went Billy Donovan just because of that 3-guard set. Like I said, implementing something that we haven't really seen in a while. Best crunch time team, and going back to my earlier points, when we don't expect anything from OKC this year, and they turned out to be a real surprise. And I think that Billy really did a good job of kind of honing Chris Paul in. I don't want to take anything away from Chris Paul personally, but I think being in that setting, Billy did a really good job of kind of getting him to buy into what they were doing with those 3-guard sets. And Chris Paul said halfway through they really started to have fun, playing together. So I think Billy did a good job of, you lose Westbrook, you lose Paul George. Most guys would just kind of fold up shop. But I think he did a good job of reining those guys in and, keeping them motivated and, believing in some of those other guys that they had on the team. You get young Shea Gilgeous and older Chris Paul. Everyone's kind of shaking their head or, wondering what was going to happen. But I think he did a good job of keeping those guys in line.
No, definitely. I mean, the team was really competitive, really fun, and as Chris Paul, as you said, Chris Paul said that they just were having fun, and it looked like it on the court because as they started getting chemistry throughout, the rest of the season, it just felt like, all right, this team can be competitive, and there was no reason for them not to be competitive if you look at the roster. But I think after Paul George and Russell Westbrook left, people were like, I don't know, right? I just don't know about Billy Donovan, especially. But you look at that roster, it's like, I mean, even Steven Adams is still solid. He wasn't as great this year as past years, but he was still solid. It's a team where I don't think that I really wonder now looking back why there was a doubt because they had talent.
I think a lot of it was around injury question marks probably. Gallo has been hurt, every year basically. So we were wondering if he was going to be able to stay healthy. Chris Paul had some injury concerns. Like I said, that 3-point guard set, we were wondering how they were going to shuffle those guys because you get a young Shea Gilgeous who had a high upside, and then you bring in Chris Paul, who you're kind of like, well, where are they going to play together? And then you got Schroeder coming off the bench. So it gets a little jam-packed, and you're kind of like, well, who's going to be sitting? Who's going to be traded? That type of thing. The other thing is I think after we saw them trade away Westbrook and Paul George, we were looking for them kind of just implode and kind of trade away everything. Yeah. That's probably where and that's where I had my doubts, is because I thought they would be competitive if they kept the team together. I didn't think they were going to be as good as they were. But I thought once they started to lose a couple games, Steven Adams would be gone, Schroeder would be gone, Chris Paul would try to be moved, and then you're looking at
To the Knicks,
a
which will
dismal
probably still
roster.
happen. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Chris Paul could probably still be traded to the Knicks, which would be terrible for them. Knicks getting a huge contract. Anyway, so I took Frank Vogel. And so at this time last year, what were we talking about with the Lakers?
head coach.
We're talking about dysfunction as a whole. Right. We're talking about dysfunction. We were talking about a team that just didn't have any direction. Rob Pelinka looked lost. And yeah, bringing in AD definitely changed the culture. But for him to work as well as he did with LeBron and AD, and to for LeBron to trust him to coach his team, because that was the most unnatural hire. We're like, where's Tyronn Lue? Right? We were like, what?
I think
but
it
worked.
That's probably why I'm a little bit more, agreeing with you here, is because you have to look at it from the aspect that no one really wanted, per se, Frank Vogel there. He's a defensive-minded coach and all this kind of stuff, and we were all looking for Ty Lue. But I think you make a good point that even, LeBron was probably like, Frank Vogel, that's really where we're going, So for him to be able to, kind of come in and step in and say, I'm going to be the guy. And also, I think what gets lost in that, I don't know if you were going to mention this, but, he had to hire Jason Kidd on, which, by all reports, some other guys didn't want to do that. So it was big of him to kind of go all in and say, you know what, if they're going to let me go for Jason Kidd later on, that is what it is, but I'm willing to accept it right now.
Yeah, that was weird, where I was like, are they seriously going to fire Frank Vogel like halfway through the year? Like, is this what LeBron is now? He's just a coach. I was like, come on, guys. Are you
I'll be honest. I was worried.
But I was like honestly, Jason Kidd just feels like an assistant coach for me. He doesn't feel like a head coach. And in Brooklyn, he wasn't great. Let's be honest. That team was, a mess when he came on. And then the Bucks, Giannis was better when he left.
Yep.
It's just a fact. Giannis wanted him. I get it. But this team was much better when he left. He fits on this team because he's an assistant coach at heart. He's an assistant coach that can help guys like LeBron because, again, as I talked about, LeBron loves having guys in the building, even on the coaching staff, that has playoff experience. Jason Kidd was incredible as a player, right? So that's part of it as well, I think.
I want to ask you, how much of, if any, do you think Frank Vogel played a key in Anthony Davis being Defensive Player of the Year or a candidate for it? Do you think that his system and the way he coaches and the way he wants to operate really helped him, or do you think it was more AD?
I see. This is one of the weirdest things for me. So the Lakers went from last year being the most dysfunctional team to when that trade happened, everyone was like, this team's amazing. Yeah. Like, what happened? One player literally changed from the Browns, the gosh dang Patriots dynasty. Like, what happened? What happened in a span of one day? And it's like the way for this team to work had to be Frank Vogel, because this building was in dysfunction a year ago. That's kind of what I point to. And then him coming in with that system, like for AD and LeBron to work. Remember, you had doubts when you came on the show when we did our preview, and you were like, "This is not going to work."
Yeah, I'll be the first one to admit I was completely wrong about this. I thought this was going to implode halfway through the year.
And I told you this is going to work. It is going to work, and there has to be credit to Frank Vogel for that. I don't know how much.
I also think key with Frank Vogel is, I think he played a key in bringing in a guy like Avery Bradley and stuff, and these real kind of defensive pieces that I think get lost in the fold in that LA kind of mix. I think that was one of the most underrated signings of the year. And I'll be honest, when they said he was going to start and stuff, I was like, wow, Avery Bradley.
That was weird for me too. I'm still a little weirded out by it.
Yeah, and
His impact is there,
Dwight
but it's not.
Howard had a bounce back defensive year, rebounding, that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think this is the type of guy, like you said, that kind of brought a toughness to this kind of Lakers team that they didn't previously have.
And let's talk about Dwight for a second. I mean, the guy figured himself out.
Yeah,
Like,
he did.
my God.
That to me was the biggest shock. When I saw that signing, I was like, wow, they're really doing this again after the whole, what was it, 2010 with Steve
It
Nash,
was 2013, 2012, 2013.
2013. Yeah, I was like, wow, they're really going after this again. But I'll give credit to Dwight. He really seemed to kind of, and I didn't think he could, but step into kind of a more of a reserve role. But I think him in that role is hugely effective when he doesn't have to be the guy, the center that everyone is, has expected from him since he left Orlando. When he can just be a reserve, he's a really good piece to have.
He's finally on a team where he feels valued. Washington, no value. Memphis, no value. LA,
Yeah,
when he was first there, basically no value, just a cancer, basically. No one wanted him, and now
yeah.
finally he's kind of found his spot. All right, first team. Luka, Harden, LeBron, Giannis, Rudy Gobert. For me, who do you have?
I'm with you all the way until I went Jokic first team center.
Okay, so here's my thought with Jokic. He had a terrible first 2 months. His first 2 months were terrible. Like, he was not Jokic for the first 2 months. And there was a period early on in this season where everyone was freaking out about Denver because Jokic wasn't being Jokic. He didn't play a full season in terms of talent-wise. I think it took him 2 months to kind of get in shape, get ready to go. I don't think he's on this list, but he's not a first-teamer because I think he didn't come into this season really ready to go.
Yeah, I'm valuing his stardom according to that Denver team. I think he's the biggest piece on that Denver team.
Oh, no
Obviously,
question.
I don't think that Jamal Murray is as good as people think he is. I think Jokic carries a lot of weight, and I think you're right. He started off really slow, but I think he needed that to be able to understand that he needs to be the guy for that team. He can't just, sit back and kind of let the other guys.
That got guys like Murray do
Yeah,
stuff
Murray,
perimeter.
and he
Gary
he
Harris,
he
whatever.
needs to be the guy for that team. He can't wait for Michael Porter to develop. He has to be the guy for that team. That's to me why I put him there, is just because of he finally was the guy that we needed him to be towards the end of the year. He was finally trending in that direction where he knew that he had to step up and lead the team.
Yeah.
And to me also, I'm not willing to put Rudy or someone like that on first team, just because I feel like he lacks so much offense.
Here's the deal.
And Jokic has his problems defensively. I'm not gonna say that he started out of shape and stuff, but I just feel that he has so much more of an impact on his team. Not that Rudy doesn't. I just like we were saying earlier, with defense kind of being a lost trend in the NBA, I feel like it's less value for me.
Here's the thing. This center position, the picks that you can have, and I've looked through, so many people's first teams just to sort of get an idea of, how this could look, because this is like my first time ever doing this.
Yeah.
But center's hard because
Center's really hard.
Because here's the deal. AD's not a center.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot put him at center in this. You cannot put LeBron James at guard. You can't do that. So because you can't do that, there's only maybe 3 or 4 guys that really are pure centers that you can pick.
Exactly. That the group you can pick from is so small anyway. That's why I feel like it can differ so much with center, is because like you said, you can't slide a guy like AD into a center spot in this type of thing.
Yeah.
So it makes it hard, but I think that's also why there's probably some differing opinions on these centers. Other than that, first team,
you're good.
100% with you. Yeah.
Second team: Lillard, Beal, Kawhi, AD, and Jokic.
Ooh, there's a guy I didn't really think about, Bradley Beal, and he had a really good year.
Here are a couple of guys that I was thinking about here: Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. And that's where I had a tough time, but I went with Beal. Again, maybe a bit of bias fantasy team, but it doesn't matter. I think that Washington, they had a case to make the playoffs. It wasn't incredible, but Beal makes this team run. Like it does. Like John Wall not being there, like he's in a terrible spot. It sucks, because we know how great of a player he is because we watch him, but not a lot of casual fans watch the Washington Wizards. The guy's
Yeah,
a great player.
he is really good, and that's one guy I don't even have on my third team, so I probably messed that up a little bit. But
I
my
don't think you did because the guard position's so messed up. Like
yeah, but
you could do whatever with that.
I continued my OKC love, and I put Chris Paul on the second team.
That's
I
actually
I I,
perfect.
I
I don't have a problem with
rewarded
that.
him for that like kind of leadership role that he took on, and being an all-star and all that really played a key in it for me. So I kind of rewarded him for his standings and his leadership and all that kind of thing. Being the guy on that team.
Here here's
Um,
here's a guy I feel bad about putting on the second team. Kawhi Leonard. He doesn't deserve to be on any of these teams. He doesn't. And it's because he just doesn't play enough games. The guy's he's the load management guy. I mean, he doesn't obviously I'm going to put him in here because he's Kawhi. Like, it's kind of the
the,
hype
the
train with him.
talent level is too much not to, but yeah, it's hard to when he's like you
Not
said, he's
playing as much as he should.
not playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went Dame, Chris Paul, Kawhi, AD, and then my center for second team was Embiid.
Yeah. I have no Sixers on here. I avoided the Sixers completely. I
You
had
avoided
Simmons
him?
and I took him off.
Really?
I I don't like the Sixers. I'm frustrated with the Sixers every time I watch them. They're legit. Like I watched the six legit. The team I watched the most this year. So I watched the Lakers and the Clippers, and then I watched the Sixers. And every time I watch it, it frustrates me to no end. It's like people with the Houston Rockets. It frustrates. It's like, how does this even work? Like Embiid was hurt for a good portion of the year. Simmons went off, and when Simmons gets hurt and Embiid goes off, like,
They
what is
can't work
happening?
together. They can't work together.
What is happening? Like legit, it frustrated me to no end.
Yeah, they're a pretty frustrating team to watch just because I think it's a little bit clunky. I think there's a little bit too much big there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's probably a discussion for another day between you and me. I think we've had the debate of
We'll get there when we talk about the
Simmons
Sixers.
or Embiid a couple of times. So
Right. We'll if you guys haven't heard that, we'll get to that as we go along with the podcast. But for this, we'll just focus on the teams. But yeah, I just have a tough time putting Sixers on here.
yeah, I went Embiid, like I said, because of the skill level, offensively and defensively, and then also I think he kind of did the same thing that Jokic did, where Shaq got on him a little bit earlier in the year and
Yeah.
was telling him, you got to be the guy for this.
And then he does that for a week, and then he becomes regular Embiid. He doesn't know what he
Yeah,
is.
he's a little bit inconsistent, but when he's there, it's so good. It's hard for me to leave him off of, but
But I'll be honest, he's not there more than he is.
yeah,
He's not
I
there more
agree.
often than not.
I agree.
And that's what's so frustrating.
That is frustrating because when you see that type of build and that type of skill level, you want him to be,
Yeah. And to Damian Lillard as well, I wanted to touch on him. Here's the thing. Lillard was kind of that team this year. McCollum didn't have the most incredible season compared to
Mhm.
what he normally has. Lillard was kind of that whole team there in that playoff push, and he really wanted to make the playoffs with a team that was filled with, Carmelo they had to bring in. They just had so many injuries to their younger pieces. A team that made the Western Conference Finals last year, that team was basically gone this year. Lillard played to such an incredible level. He had a stretch where he just went insane.
Yeah, I mean, what was he averaging, like 40 points there for a
Something like
while?
that for
Yeah,
like a month.
yeah, for like a month he was averaging like 40 every night. It
And
was
same with
crazy.
Harden too, like for a month or two there, like 35
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah. But Dame's always been a guy that gets kind of lost in the fold when you look at the bigger picture. All-star, starts or making the team. He's always got lost. He's finally getting the recognition I think he deserves because he's always been a guy that puts up good numbers. His team's always solid. They haven't always been great. I think last year was a surprise the most that they made the Western Conference Finals. But what I love most about him is just the loyalty aspect. You know, he said if he can't win in Portland, he doesn't want to go somewhere else to win. Um, a guy with that kind of attitude to me speaks volumes, just because he's willing to work with the guys he's got, and he's not going to complain about it. You know, and to me, that's why it was big for him this year to really not say anything. You know, he's always said, "Let's keep the team together. Let's keep the team together." This was the year that most people by accounts were saying, okay, maybe it's time to break up him and CJ, you know, and get off some of that money and get some younger pieces,
I
you
mean,
know.
they paid Lillard a major contract. They're not going to be able to move that at this point. So,
No, I'm talking about CJ.
oh, it's CJ, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think just the production level that he's been having, and to not ever say a word about, you know, head coach, management, other players on the team, it's a guy you basically have to root for. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's
Here's the thing that makes me sad about the Blazers. It's that uh, for Lillard and McCollum to get their more recognition that they deserve, they need a third star there, and they're just not going to have it.
that's why I think that you probably do have to break them up. I think you try and move off CJ, and you get a piece that you can. They really need a wing badly. They
Mm-hmm.
really need a guy that they can kind of, you know, swap defensive positions and offensive positions where he can run in that 2, 3, or 4 range.
Mm-hmm.
A really good wing, but
Here's what I proposed, and I proposed that all season. Obviously, this trade's gone now because this contract's going to be off the books for them this season. But I really wanted to see the Whiteside Kevin Love trade happen. I
yeah,
really thought that if they made that deal and maybe added in a couple first round picks, because who cares? They don't need the picks. I think seeing McCollum, Lillard, and I think Carmelo actually played a pretty important role for them this year. And then you have Kevin Love. I think this team has a different view about him and a different excitement. I'll tell you what, if Love was with Portland, I think it would create a lot of excitement in the NBA, especially here on the West Coast.
it would, and especially Love being back in, you know, his home state. There's probably some comfort there for him getting back to winning or winning team, I should say. I don't know why they didn't try and move off Whiteside. I don't really see. I understand you wanted to try and push for the playoffs, but Nurk is coming back, you know, and it just seems like kind of a wasted chance, like you said, to get someone like Love or something like that. You know, pick up another guy that you can build around, because I don't see, like you said, now that Whiteside's off the books, I don't know how you're going to be able to bring another piece in now. It's kind
Yeah.
of it was a weird scenario for me.
I think Whiteside was productive, but Love would have been a lot more productive long term because he's on a bigger deal. You're not going to get anybody major in free agency anyway. You might
Exactly.
as well just
I
pull the
think
trigger.
exactly. I think long term, you look at, okay, maybe we don't make the playoffs this year if we lose Whiteside, but next year with Love, CJ, Dame, you know, you get Nurk back, Zach Collins is back. You have a good group there that you can run with, where Hassan was productive, but now you lost him for
He,
nothing, you
he's
know?
he's kind of like a smaller version of Andre Drummond, where he's a rebound focused guy, and he's incredible at that. But that's not going to, as we've seen with Drummond, unfortunately, that just doesn't get you to the playoffs.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much Cleveland was asking for. Maybe they were asking for, you know, a
Yeah.
boatload for Love. Who
Well,
knows?
I mean, I think the only way the money would have worked is Whiteside, I think. Yeah, that's the only way the money would have worked. So I would have put Whiteside in a couple of picks, but I wonder if
That,
they even offered it. Because I really don't think Portland went out and even did anything, at least from what I've heard.
that to me would be so odd for you to not even explore that. That's what I'm saying. Like, if
Yeah.
you were to not even ask, it would be one thing if they were like, we want 3 first rounders and Zach Collins too. You know what I mean? Then you're
Yeah.
like, whoa, no way. But
Yeah.
for you to not even look, maybe they would have, you know, a
Here's the
version
thing with
of
Kevin Love
Whiteside.
too. Here's the thing with Kevin Love too. The reality of the situation is no one wanted him because people were
Yeah,
too afraid of the contract. But the only team that could have feasibly made the contract work was Portland.
exactly. It was like a one. it was the only thing that could have happened. So that's why it's so odd that it didn't happen, is
Yeah.
because we were all looking at it and like, this is perfect. It's going to line up perfect for it to happen.
And it would have been great for Cleveland, too, because they just get that money off the books and they can restart, because most of their money is coming off the books this year anyway.
Exactly. And they get a fresh restart. Portland can keep trying to do what they're doing because, like you said, they're not bringing anyone else in. They're tapped. So
yeah,
this is the only way you're going to be able to bring in an influential piece.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, based on what I've seen, I forgot to wait. Actually, never mind. I do have a center on here. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't know if they explored it or not, but I think more likely than not, nobody explored Kevin Love. I think he was available and nobody explored him because people were too afraid of the contract. I think it was more of a contract thing than anything.
Maybe because, I mean, when you look at what Detroit got for Drummond, it made me wonder what the whole market looked like. Because
I don't think Drummond had any market.
No, but that's what I'm saying. If there's no one like looking for these guys, you just settle for a second rounder. It makes me wonder what the market even was for a lot of these other guys. You know what I mean? Where maybe no one even asked about Love, like you're saying.
Yeah. For sure. It was a weird market for these type of players like Drummond, like Love. It was just strange.
It was.
All right, third team. Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, Pascal Siakam, Jason Tatum, and Bam is my third team.
That's a pretty good team. I went Westbrook, Trae Young, Tatum. I went Jimmy Butler instead of Pascal Siakam. And then I had Gobert from.
Okay. I love Jimmy Butler. I feel bad that he was off this list. I think Tatum was incredible this year. Like after the All-Star break, he just went off. Here's the thing. I actually liked Westbrook this year. I did.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Once they made that switch and got rid of Capella, I was like, okay.
Westbrook looked finally like we thought Westbrook should look with that space gone.
But I didn't see enough of it. And there were some weeks where it was great, and there were some weeks where it was horrible.
Yeah,
I mean,
they had some pretty low lows in the middle of that.
I mean, we'll see how it looks in Orlando because we're going to get finally another look at it again in the more playoff setting. But I'll tell you what, if this doesn't work, I don't know what Houston's going to do. Because I think Harden's great, but this team doesn't feel like a championship team to me at all. It just feels like they're testing stuff out. They're trying to be more unique. And I think they're still kind of holding on to the Golden State loss a few years ago. I just don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, that's where you and me differ because I've always been kind of a Houston guy. And I think this team is a dark horse for the NBA Finals. I really think that this team has some potential, and I think they're a team that can really sneak up on some other teams just because of the fact that, like you said, no one's really talking about them this year after this whole Corona, thing. Right. So I think it'll be really beneficial for them to get a restart, and I think this is the one year that they're going to sneak up on people because I don't hear anyone talking about them, but also people are forgetting that they completely revamped their whole team.
No, it's revamped, but it's revamped in the most weird way possible.
Yeah, but I think it really does work for them.
It does, but again, as we talked about, there was one week where it was great, and the next it was terrible. They can't have a bad week in the NBA playoffs. They can't have a bad week in Orlando, because if they have a bad week in Orlando, they're going to get screwed.
I know, but what happens if they catch fire? That's what I'm saying. If they catch fire, that you can't – that's also what was beneficial, I think. It's going to sound weird for me to say, but the whole pandemic actually, I think, benefited them because there's less opportunities to play against them. It's more of a advantage to them now than it is if teams have been playing them for the last 2 months.
And you know what's weird about small ball lineups? This is something that when Miami started doing this back in 2013, what was weird is like it's not like a center can just back down PJ Tucker, because as we talked about, there's no centers that are really back to the basket centers. It's weird because if you put this lineup in the 90s with Michael Jordan
They
or
get
something
killed.
like that, it would get creamed.
Yeah, they
But
would
in,
get killed.
in where we're
But
at now,
there's no centers unless the only problem I see them having is if they match up with Denver. I think
right.
Jokic would be a real problem for them.
Oh,
Other than that,
100%.
I think they can handle it.
Yeah. It's
But
so weird
I've
for
been
me.
high on Houston since last year. That's where you and me have a lot of our debates from. Is I've been all in on Houston, and they're going all in, like we said, with the revamped roster. So it'll be interesting to see if it doesn't work out this year, like you said, because I wonder what pieces you try to move, if you can move it all, to try and kind of retool it again.
So how I feel about Philly is how I feel about Houston. They're good, but they're not there.
So
They're not.
it's a love hate for you.
It's like I get it. It works, but when it doesn't work, it's horrible. Like when it doesn't work, it looks like frustration in a bottle.
Like hot garbage, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like frustration in a bottle. It's so weird.
Yeah, that's the thing, is just too inconsistent. But like I'm saying, when either of those teams are on, though,
Yeah.
you're in trouble.
It's but again, like
But how often is it on?
right, and that's what I'm frustrated with always. Yeah, I had Bam Adebayo in here. You had Jimmy Butler. I love this Heat team this year. That was one of my favorite teams this year. This Heat team, with all these young pieces that they have, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, for example, and of course Bam had a breakout year this year. There's a good chance he could have been in the most improved discussion as well. This Miami team with Jimmy Butler, I think Butler's finally found his spot, his team that he can work well with. This team has a chance to be really competitive for the next 3-4 seasons, including this year as well.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like the fit with Bam here on the third team. He was a guy I had runner up on most improved, like you were saying. A really good, and I think a lot of us were expecting that from him this year with the bigger role with the Sangan. So it was good to see him step up into that role. But going back to that Miami as a whole, I think Jimmy finally did find a spot where he can be the guy, and I think he finally appreciates the younger talent around him for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Spoelstra's always done a good job.
Yeah,
And I think
great.
he did a really good job of, like you said, bringing in some of this kind of talent that no one really thought about. Like a Duncan Robinson, was kind of just a lost cause, once he got into the league for a while. But he found a real niche, obviously with his shooting, and Kendrick Nunn being undrafted. You know what I mean? I think Spoelstra did a really good job with his team, and I think Pat Riley's done a really good job with this team ever since those dynasty Miami Heat teams left. I think, they had their one or two down years, but he's done a good job of reconstructing it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I really love Spo. I think he's a great coach. He fits this team. Jimmy Butler loves him. I mean, he's just like after those Miami Heat years, it's like he's the guy, right? Him and Pat Riley, they know what they're doing, and it showed with this team.
It really did, and it should be, because Miami should be a hot spot for these players to want to go, and I think it finally is again.
Yeah, for sure. All right, now let's move on to the UFC. We're probably going to have some games as well going back to the NBA when we finish the show. But let's get to the UFC. So I have a theory about Masvidal and Jones and the whole contract issue here. So in the NBA, we have this thing called the player empowerment movement, right? This is something that's been the case for the NBA for the last 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the players. And we talked about it at the beginning of the show with the whole Kyrie thing. It is about the players. Well, guess what's happening in the UFC? It's called the fighter empowerment movement. Fighters with this amount of leverage now, with guys like Conor McGregor making all this money and all this stuff. And the sport is now not where it was back when it started, or back when Zuffa bought it with Dana and all that stuff. It's at a different place now where there's money in it. People care about it. And the fighters are wanting, and in some places getting, more leverage. The fighters want more leverage in contracts. They deserve it. The fighters want more leverage in negotiations. They're trying to get it, and they deserve to get that. This is a movement that I don't think Dana was ever expecting to deal with, and I think it's frustrating him. But in reality, this is something this is why guys are moving to Bellator or ONE. There's other organizations out there that still produce great products. Obviously, not to the level of the UFC. There's a reason why we don't talk about Bellator or ONE on the show very often.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation is the fighters are taking control, and it could potentially, the biggest problem that Dana's going to deal with, I think, in the next year or two, it could potentially ruin some of the talent pool for the UFC long term. And that's where the worry is with Masvidal and Jones and the whole contract negotiation thing.
Yeah, I think you bring up a fair point. I think this is how it's gonna have to go, though. Like you said, with all these leagues and stuff that we've been talking about, the player or the fighter empowerment is gonna start to creep up. UFC's been kind of a low financial spot, before all these recent ratings and stuff have come in. But I think that's what kind of worries me when we start talking about this is I think the more money that gets brought into this, I wonder if the product is going to be diminished. I'm wondering, yeah, you're going to have good fighters, but that's where I think you run into the problem of when boxing had fixed fights and stuff like that. I think the more money that gets pulled into this, the less control that a guy like Dana is going to be able to have over this type of thing. And I think that's what more or less what Dana's worried about is because once his control starts to slip, some of these fighters become, bigger than the league or stuff like that. And you get involved in gambling and stuff like that. That's always been my worry with UFC is once it gets too big, like you said, some of the talent's going to move away, but I think the talent that stays might be a little bit corrupted in that fact.
I don't see. I'm not sure about the corrupted thing, but I think there is going to be. I don't know how long this is going to take, but there is going to be some kind of fighters union at some point, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: if the UFC wants to get more recognition as a whole as a sport, it has to have a system. Well, let's talk about MMA as a whole, right? Mixed martial arts as a whole. For it to have the same pool as other leagues such as the NFL, the NBA, MLB, whatever, the structure in which it operates is going to have to be similar. This is not boxing. MMA has already been way beyond boxing for years. Boxing does not have as much value. A huge reason is these promotions that have corrupted the system or whatever. The reality is, in order for MMA as a whole to not be in the spot that boxing is, it has to create an environment that is similar to the major sports in America, where it's fighters unions, where it's negotiations and things like this. Obviously, we don't like labor negotiations, but it's part of the business.
It has to happen for it to be able to function. But I think also a point that you've made to me previously that I kind of want to touch on is that what was I going to say? Sorry.
It's all good.
I forgot what I was going to say. What were you just talking about? Player negotiations?
We're talking about like fighters unions and stuff like that, like with players unions and all that stuff, and how that's been the case in major sports leagues, and how the UFC or MMA as a whole needs to do that.
It has to kind of move towards boxing a little bit because the point you've made to me previously is that this needs to get off pay-per-view. They need to be able to
right, and that's part of it too.
That's going to bring in more money, like you said, which also I'm worried about when you're moving towards boxing, but you're trying to stay away from the corruption side of it, which is also. But I think you make a good point when you say the fighters have to have the fighter union and stuff like that. That's what I think to me can kind of bridge that gap between, corruption and fighter happiness level or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Where they're getting paid a fair amount, but
it's in, and I think that's part of it too. I think what's the and it's the pay-per-view model that the UFC has now is the most weird pay-per-view model I've ever seen. It's just unnatural and weird, and it's exhausting for fans. I think the UFC over the last year has actually lost a good amount of its, like even for me, I don't watch some of these, smaller cards. Now I am, of course, because there's not much on, but it's like other than the pay-per-views, it's lost its importance. It's kind of gone back to boxing in the sense that these smaller cards aren't as important as they were in the FS1 era or whatever. But it's one of these things where I feel like the pay-per-view model is just absurdly bizarre. Like what, like the ESPN Plus thing. I know we've had a conversation on this on the show before, but it's like the ESPN Plus thing. Like if you're gonna go on ESPN, give the fighters more of a platform on ESPN. And yes, it is a lot better than it was at Fox, but at the same time, it's not there. Like the fighters just don't have the same platform. And even, with DC and Hawani with their show, and that's all, mobilized or whatever. I would like that to be maybe on an ESPN network or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's bizarre to me because it feels like it's just so abnormal. And it's not the purpose. Why does the UFC go on ESPN? Why is ESPN important? It's to help the fighters. It's to help the sport grow because ESPN is the worldwide leader. If that's what Dana is saying, then that needs to be the case. And that goes for all of their programming. And that's where I think, yes, ESPN Plus boxing is doing the same thing. They want to be kind of a hub for combat sports. I get that. But the way that that's being set up with the pay-per-view is just mind-numbing. Does that,
Yeah, but I think also, like you're saying, with it becoming more and more, streamlined and broadcasted on, bigger networks like ESPN, that will, I don't understand how Dana can really avoid these type of, player labor negotiations, because at a certain point it just becomes where the money's so great and the influence is so great and the product is being advertised everywhere that you basically you're running into that, like you said, fighters union or whatever it will become. So it's not, I don't think Dana can really avoid that aspect of it.
Yeah. But I think part of it is just there's some weird negotiations with the money. It's bizarre. It makes like even guys like Ariel Hawani who reported on the whole John Jones situation, you sit there and go, wait, he was asking for Deontay Wilder money? Was he not? What? There's no, I mean, even with the reporting, I understand the UFC doesn't want, as much of the stuff out with the money. I get it with the whole pay-per-view thing, but it's like money's always been a problem with the UFC because the way they hide it, the way they do stuff like this, and even it being, not a yearly contract, but a fight contract. So if you retire, you still have fights on your contract. It's so weird. It's like
it's growing at such a rapid pace, though. I mean, when Dana
Yeah.
got it, it was small. It was peanuts.
Yeah.
It's growing at such a rapid pace. I think he's starting to realize he's losing the control. You know what I mean?
So
it's starting,
the biggest thing for you
the
is the
power's
control
leaning
thing.
towards the fighters.
Yeah. And how do you think he manages that, though? Do you think he's managing that well or no?
No, I don't think he's managed it well, since it really started to take off. I was with you after me and you talked. At first I wanted it to go to ESPN, but now they're doing ESPN Plus, like you said, all this other crap, to be honest, that's taken away from the actual product. And I
Yeah.
think Dana's tried to market it to where he's bringing in money from all these avenues, but if he just streamlined it into one main thing, he would make a lot more money. I'm with you. The way they go about distributing the money and doing that type of thing is shady at best. It's just kind of an odd scenario, that the way they run it.
I mean, so a couple of things from this conversation. One, I think we can both agree that it makes 1,000 times more sense to have pay-per-views on ESPN and just have them on regular ESPN and not have them be pay-per-views. You can have ads because honestly, who cares, right? I don't care about watching 2 minutes of ads instead of watching the corners. Like,
Yeah,
I really do not care. It
me either.
doesn't dilute from, like, when we had the ESPN card this weekend, did you sit there and go, man, I wish I paid like $50 so I don't have the, like, no, you didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
So, like, having these fights on ESPN makes more sense. Why is it these random cards that, yeah, they matter, but it's not that important? If they put a pay-per-view, and obviously, the ESPN Plus model, when it first started, it's obviously going to get a lot of pub, and because they put a championship fight on it and all this stuff, right? But then as you started the pay-per-view thing, it kind of freaked everybody out because it's like, it's complicated. It doesn't work out well. Like, sometimes you have to pay twice to get the fights, and it's a complete mess. It makes no.
You're buying another subscription too. I mean, you have to buy ESPN Plus and then
Yeah.
work from that. It's
And they
just
don't even have all the content from Fight Pass 2, which was bizarre. I thought they would put a lot of the content from Fight Pass on there, because wouldn't
yeah,
that make more sense? It,
yeah. That's what I mean. It's so many different avenues of what they're working with. It's they're. I almost think they're trying to, like you said, kind of lower the fighters back down to the level they were. Where
uh-huh.
the money isn't being grown at such a rapid pace. But in a sport like fighting, it's one guy. The marketing is going to be huge for the one guy. That's what you're marketing, is one fighter. So it's
Yeah.
always going to be fighter driven. It doesn't really make sense. But
Yeah.
I think that's how UFC's made their money for so long, is by having, Ultimate Fighter shows and stuff like that, where it's a group, and
Yeah.
they're paying
And
them as a group and stuff like that.
but see, they're even differentiating from that now with the Contender Series. They're not
Yeah,
doing Ultimate Fighter anymore. They're doing Contender Series. What is Contender Series? Fighters.
yeah,
So even the concept of their new shows, which Contender Series is great because it's super fast paced, right? The fights are not 3 hours long; they're like an hour and a half, right? Because it's like one fight after another, which is awesome. And I wish more pay-per-views were like that anyway, but that's a whole separate thing. I get that they want to do this whole, I understand that piece, but it's like, even their shows that they're making are fighter centric now.
yeah,
So where is it coming from? And then number two, what about yearly contracts? Why
yeah,
is it a 5-fight contract? No, give me like a 4-year contract like the NBA or something.
yeah,
And give me, the contract doesn't have, you can set it up in a way with this system, unlike boxing. We're not paying someone based off the fight, but you're paying someone based off the contract, because you have a system that, or based on a yearly contract. You have that system where you can do that. And then you can still have the championship clause, which, can change the contracts if they move up the ladder more. You can do that. But you can do that better in this system with a yearly contract basis.
I think the the problem with that would be with the smaller fighters. It would be easy for you to do that with, Conor
Yeah, I guess
McGregor,
so.
but the smaller fighters, they flip flop so much, it'd
Yeah,
be
I
a little
mean,
bit difficult.
right. I mean, I guess you could do it for the bigger fighters, and then for the smaller, you can do those fight contracts with some incentives or whatever. And
Yeah,
those stuff should be public knowledge. I think if it was more public knowledge and it being more transparent, which I know a lot of people have talked about, including Ariel Helwani, about the transparency of it, then I think we can have a more honest conversation about how to change it. Then we're just kind of sitting here throwing out
speculate.
ideas, but it being
Yeah,
sort of clueless.
we're basically speculating now. I think that's the biggest thing from that. I think I take away from this is there is no real transparency. It seems to be, kind of backlogged, where it's hard for people to be able to navigate it.
Hmm. Let's move on to another UFC topic as well. Fight Island in Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. The island looks beautiful. It's
Yeah.
awesome. It's really unique and also smart that they did this. But how has your thought process changed on Fight Island now that you've seen their sort of structure and what they're going to kind of do with it, compared to when Dana kind of threw it out there as like a hype train?
Yeah, at first, you're a little bit skeptical of it. You think of it like I compared it to like a Mortal Kombat type of setting, where it's just two guys out on a beach, but you start to get some of the actual details of it, and it like you said, it's a really beautiful island. They have a water park there, all this kind of stuff. It's a popular tourist attraction. I don't see it as much different as the way we've been watching. It's just a little bit more streamlined because it is the
And
fight
safer
island.
too.
Yeah, and it's somewhere where the UFC has been before. They're saying they're not hosting it at the same arena, but they've been to this island before, so it's not too crazy.
The funniest thing is the whole Mortal Kombat thing.
Yeah.
Like that's we're acting like this is WWE. It's ridiculous.
That,
Like
that
what are we
that's
doing?
what I, that's what I was thinking when they first said it. I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. This is gonna be like two guys out on a beach, fighting. But yeah,
I mean, there's going to be an octagon on the beach. So I wonder if they're going to, I don't know if that's just a training thing or if they're actually going to have cameras out there for UFC 251 and like actually do it on a beach setting. I wonder if they're actually
if
going to do
they
that.
do it on a beach setting, I'll be very surprised.
Yeah.
I'll be very surprised.
And here's the thing. I've always advocated for the beach settings because I mean, obviously it's tough for the fighters because it's like sunlight and all this other stuff. And I know it's a lot different, but in boxing, they do outdoor events in the summer very often. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously with the UFC, it's different. But remember, 2 years ago, we had a thought about a card in Hawaii, and there was talks about it being outside and things like that. So I wonder if they're going to test that out with Fight Island just to see how it works, see how they can streamline it, see how conditioned the fighters are to that. It could be a good testing ground for that, even if they just do it in training sessions.
yeah, I think that's a good point that you make. I think this probably would be a good type of test for that type of setting.
Yeah. All right. So this is more your topic than my topic, but I picked it. So here's the thing. So we're gonna do some soccer on this show, right? We're excited for the MLS to come back in a few weeks. We'll preview that I think in the next couple weeks here. But the Bundesliga basically just ended. Bayern Munich won the championship, as they pretty much always do at this point.
Don't
But
rub it in.
no, wait, hang on. I'm getting there. So I wanted to bring up this topic because I'm not the biggest European soccer fan, but I wanted to bring this up because you're a Dortmund fan, right? And they've always kind of been below Bayern. And I remember after the Bayern game, you posted on Facebook like pretty frustrated about it. But I wanted to kind of give you this platform to talk about your frustrations with it. What I don't really get is why Dortmund is so behind Bayern just in terms of all this stuff. I know this is more European. This might not be everyone's thing, but I really wanted to give you the platform to sort of talk about your thoughts on the season as a whole, talk about Dortmund and kind of what your frustrations are just as a whole. I kind of just wanted to give you the platform to talk about it.
Yeah, that's cool. So basically, I'll just start off with the generalization. The Bundesliga has always been kind of a second or third league to the EPL or La Liga. So it hasn't always been that like it's more top heavy than it is
Oh, for sure,
with a
100%.
whole table of competitive teams. But this season started out really exciting. Leipzig was, I'll just name you Leipzig, Bayern, and then Dortmund are basically the top three teams the last couple of years. They're good, exciting teams that compete in Champions League, all that type of thing where, you can pretty much find them wherever. As the season progressed, and as it usually does, Bayern seems to find themselves, out ahead a little bit. I'll go back and I'll just start off by saying soccer in generalization worldwide, also for the people listening that don't know this, there's no cap or anything, so you can buy players as you wish and transfer as you wish.
It's a transfer window. So you got winter and summer transfer windows. Obviously,
Yeah,
that's
you
going
have
to
two
change this year.
windows, but there's nothing stopping you from buying any player you want. Okay, so there's owners that have a lot of money and there's owners that don't have a lot of money. So Dortmund is known for getting young talent, 16, 17, 18, year old
Pulisic is a
guys.
good example if you want to go
Yeah,
American.
Pulisic is a great example for the American soccer fan. But young players, and they develop them, and they always seem to ship them off to, until recently, to Bayern, like Lewandowski.
Oh yeah.
There's number of guys that Dortmund has shipped off to Bayern. Whether that's good or bad for you to trade to your rival is, I'm not even going to get into that.
No, it's pretty
But,
bad. That's pretty
yeah,
bad.
but so yeah, Bayern has been known to basically buy a lot of their players. Um, so yeah, they always seem to start out a little bit ahead. Dortmund finally is gaining traction as far as being able to retain their players and actually pay their players is becoming a little bit more of an attractive destination for guys that actually want to stay at the club. Um, but towards the middle of the year, I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, we have a chance to win the title again this year. After last year where it looked good, promising for a while, and then at the end we slipped up again. But the problem with Bundesliga and the problem with a lot of these, and many people don't agree with me, but La Liga and EPL is usually a 3 or 4 horse race.
Yeah,
There's usually
it is.
3 or 4 teams at the top that dominate. But the problem with Bundesliga is Bayern always wins. They win the league every year. It's just something that happens. But EPL, you'll get Chelsea, Man U one year.
Chelsea will. I'm a Chelsea fan, so they'll always either finish first or fourth. They won't do anything else.
And
Anyway.
then La Liga, you get Barcelona and Real Madrid, and occasionally Atletico will chip in. But I think that's what's frustrating for me about Bundesliga is people think it's just and it is, I guess, a one-team race because Bayern always wins the league, but it's not as any less top-heavy than a lot of the other leagues. It's just we always have the same outcome. Bayern always wins, but there's always the same 4 teams that are competing for second, third, fourth.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah. It's a little bit hard for me to talk about and put into words just because, like I'm saying, my frustration for always coming in second or third is getting really stale, especially after Klopp left, who was the old manager.
He's with Liverpool now.
Right direction. But Bundesliga as a whole, I think it's one of the more exciting leagues to watch if you're looking for young talent that's going to be transferred in the next couple, months, because this next transfer window for the Bundesliga is going to be exciting. I think you're going to see there's guys like Kai Havertz who's going to be moved. He's a really intriguing prospect. Jadon Sancho is going to be moved for over £100 million, probably back to the EPL where he's from, he's from England, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's become a little bit more of a breeding ground and then ship it off, So it's fun to watch if you're into young, intriguing talent. Mm-hmm. Basically, the Bundesliga as a whole. But my frustration as a Dortmund fan will forever haunt me, and I will forever hate that I chose a team that likes to ship off their players instead of keep them. But, yeah, in a nutshell, it's basically the owners are not as rich as some other owners, which is a little bit frustrating when you sell all your young talent too for, thousands of pounds of, whatever, and then you don't buy anything with it. You just keep doing the same thing over and over. But that seems to be soccer as a whole. So
yeah. So I mean, so what do you think needs to change over the next 3-4 years for Dortmund to kind of get up a little bit more and be in that same conversation as Bayern? Because I've always felt as like an outlooker of the Bundesliga that it's always Bayern and Dortmund and no one else. That's kind of how I've always looked at it as someone who occasionally watches the matches.
Yeah, Leipzig has gotten really, really good lately. They had Timo Werner and a couple other young pieces there that I thought they were going to move, but it looks like they might be hanging on to. So they're an exciting team. But just going back to, like you're saying, for Dortmund to improve, basically all I think that needs to be done is they just need to be able to retain more of their players. Like if they were to be able to keep a guy like Jadon Sancho happy in there, he's, under 22 or something, and he's one of the most exciting players in football already. It's a little bit frustrating from a fan to always have to ship off your young players. And I know I just went on a long tangent and generalization about Bundesliga in whole and all that, but
I think that's
Yeah,
important for this discussion, especially for people who aren't as big into European soccer as you are, even me to a much lesser degree. But still, I think that's
yeah,
important to mention.
yeah. But I mean, just for Dortmund to be competitive, really, the thing with soccer that people have to understand is these guys are being scouted when they're 13, 14, 15 years old. So they're picked up at a young age and signed to, youth teams, youth clubs, and they're brought up through a system. So Dortmund's always done a really good job at scouting guys when they're young, but they just can't seem to retain these guys because I think a lot of the problem also too is this narrative that the Bundesliga is kind of a farmers league where these guys they grow up in these systems and they get shipped off to the EPL,
Mm-hmm.
EPL or La Liga or whatever. So I think once we can kind of change that narrative, and I think what's going to have to change is someone's going to have to beat Bayern for the title. And I think that narrative of the Bundesliga as a farmers league will kind of change as a whole, which will help be able to keep some of these players because a lot of these guys that Dortmund is scouting or whatever they have international players from Morocco, England, whatever. And a lot of these guys just want to go play in the EPL because they figure that's the best league because that has been the narrative for so long because there's a lot more interchanging parts in the EPL. So it's a little bit more intriguing for a guy who's from there to go, oh, I'm going to go back to my home country, and the league's a little bit more exciting. But if you can change that narrative around your league as just being a farmers league,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to be hard to break that window with a team like Bayern that can pretty much swoop up any player that they so choose because they've won Champions Leagues and stuff like that. It's the same problem I think La Liga has. It's really Real Madrid and Barcelona at the top, and then a
Maybe
couple other teams,
Atletico.
maybe Atletico here and there. Yeah, but it's just once you can kind of crack that, and I think that's what EPL does so well is it's a really balanced league, and I think that's just from the history of it, and that's the big thing about soccer that most people don't know is the history really follows a lot of these teams, and if you have good
Oh,
history,
100%.
it's there's not like a draft, like in American sports where you can kind of rejuvenate your kind of farm system. You have to go out and scout these guys, and they have to want to sign for your club,
Uh-huh.
which is also the problem with going back to your Dortmund versus Bayern argument, is because a lot of these guys see Dortmund as they can get me up to a certain point, and then I can go transfer to a team that I can win now on.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have a little time for some games really quick?
I do.
All
We're
right,
good.
perfect. Let's do it. So you came up with this idea. We're going to do some games that we've seen from other shows. A couple from The Herd, Rich Eisen show. So a bunch of these are from different shows that we, saw what they did, and we kind of want to translate to the NBA. Maybe we'll do other leagues as well. So you'll catch those. These two are from The Herd and also from the Rich Eisen show. These are the two shows that have popularized these. So let me actually first pull up the document that we are working on, as we always work on the documents, of course, before we do these shows. All right, so here we go. We're doing the Best in Class 2020 awards. This is from The Herd for the NBA. He did the NFL. We're going to do the NBA. Best dressed, we got Westbrook, Butler, Paul, and Kyle Kuzma. What's your pick here?
I'm going to go Westbrook. It's a little bit more of the streamlined answer, but I think some of the fashion statements he's come out with are pretty interesting. If I had to go with best dress that I could wear, I wouldn't be picking this because he wears some pretty outrageous outfits. I'd probably go Jimmy Butler because he has that kind of classy Miami look.
Yeah.
But, I think style and best dressed it's a little bit more of an artist thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an acquired taste, which is also kind of why I threw Kuzma in this list, just because of the fact that Kuzma has a little bit of a funky style too.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick someone that's not on this list. I'm gonna take James Harden.
James Harden has some pretty good style
Yeah,
too.
I think the Rockets have embraced it in a way that's like, if there's one thing I love about the Rockets, other than Daryl Morey, who I actually really like Daryl Morey a lot, if you listen to him on Bill Simmons and all this stuff, I always love hearing these GMs and head coaches talk open on like podcasts and stuff like that. And Bill Simmons has done a lot of work with that kind of stuff. But I here's the thing: the Rockets with the whole red carpet thing. Like everything feels like an award show. It's like the Golden Globes, like 40 times a year. It's really weird, but at the same time, they've embraced it in a way that I really like. So I'm going to take actually someone who's not on this list, and I'm going to take Harden.
That's a good one.
Okay, biggest bromance. I know what you're going to pick. But Russ and Harden, LeBron AD, Kyrie and Katie, Stephen Clay, and Bobby and Toby. I think we know what you're going to pick, but go ahead.
Yeah. I'll just mention, though, I did try and keep all teammates except Bobby and Toby.
I think Bobby and Toby's fair because that's the classic.
That's the classic, and that's the original best bromance.
So Bobby and Toby are who again, for those people who are not like huge NBA
That's
fans?
Boban Marjanovic and Tobias Harris. And those guys have been on multiple teams together until this year they got split apart. But those guys have their own show they put out.
Which is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, they have some really funny content out there for those of you that want to go watch that. It's really funny. Them in like a studio cycling class and stuff. You know, it's really funny. So to me, this one's pretty easy. But I did throw in, if I'm going to go with, teammates, I'd go Russ and Harden just because I think, like you touched on, those guys have so much fun. You see them dancing, on the
They've
bench,
been friends for a long time, though.
Yeah, they're a pretty fun duo to watch, too. So
yeah,
my original pick would be Bobby and Toby, but if I had to pick teammates, I'd go Russ and Harden.
I'm going to go LeBron and AD. I think they've kind of built something there, right? And it's been fun. Again, LeBron. I love LeBron. Like, sue me. I'm a LeBron guy. I have his shoes. Like, come on, man. But I really think over the summer league, you saw them at the games and stuff like that, and they really started to build some chemistry this year. Best celebrity fan. I have a bone to pick with the best celebrity fan, but the nominees are Drake, Kevin Hart, Spike Lee, Quavo, and Jack Nicholson. You can't put Drake on here.
Why not?
He works for the Raptors. He's not a celebrity. He's a celebrity fan, but he's not really. He works for them.
I know, but at his core, he was a celebrity.
I know, but at the same time, he literally works for them. Like, he's their global ambassador. Like, he gets paid by them. So that's why he gets the courtside seats, and that's why he gets to tap Nick Nurse on the shoulder all the time. But yeah. So I don't like that because I think, he's a celebrity fan, but he really works for the team, and OVO's the sponsorship of their practice facility.
Well, the other one I was going to put on here then was Jay-Z.
Oh, yeah, so Jay-Z.
You can put Jay-Z there.
I would put Jay-Z and Rihanna because that would be my pick. Because immediately I would say Rihanna would be my number one. Because Rihanna at games is just like star-studded. It's like all the cameras go there.
To me, the only problem with Rihanna is that she might be at a lot of games, but I don't see her. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of games that I don't see her.
In terms of me, pump up.
This one, like I'm going to go with a little bit off the grid. I'm going to go Quavo.
Yeah.
Because he's really embraced Trae Young. Yeah, and the whole ATL. Him and 2 Chainz have really embraced ATL as a whole. But they've really embraced Trae Young as kind of being the guy for, that city, and Ice Trae, obviously, with all the bling and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm gonna go Quavo.
So I mean, I think we have to mention Spike Lee here because he just spent way too much money and basically is the Knicks brand. Do you remember what was that stupid thing on First Take where they brought in a guy? I forgot the guy's name, and they said, "I'm the brand ambassador for him." And I'm like, wait, what? So, like, the Knicks are even more of a mess on First Take than they are on the court, which I think is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to beat, though.
Because with Stephen A. But, I mean, Spike Lee is the Knicks, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless you're a guy who plays fantasy and likes Elfrid Payton, because he gets assists. But that's about it. I mean, there's not much there.
Yeah.
The Knicks website is even a mess. Their website's weird.
Is it?
Yeah, like their player stats section is strange. But either way, yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Spike, man. Jesus.
It's been a long couple years for him, hasn't it?
Oh, boy. It's been a long couple of years for all Knicks fans, man. I have friends who – our guy Mo, who's one of our tech engineers for U-Wave, is a Knicks fan. So he came on the show and he wasn't happy over this.
For him.
So it's – okay. But sorry about that.
No worries.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. So I guess I have to. I guess if I'm gonna make a pick based on this list, I would go with Spike Lee. But I like Jay-Z and Rihanna as a combo because they're just, they're kind of everywhere basically. But
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see. Best sidekick: CJ, Anthony Davis, Westbrook, Paul George, Chris Middleton, or Kristaps. Why is Kristaps on this list?
I had to throw it in. I had to.
You had to throw it in as a Mavs fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your
It
pick
was
here?
more or less, I was just like, I'm thinking of duos. Because the problem with this is there's a lot of trios. There's
Yeah.
a lot of guys that you can make trios for. So, I mean, Luka and KP are a little bit younger, but I think Kristaps will make a good sidekick one day. Being a Mavs fan, I had to.
Yeah. I'm worried about Kristaps, man. He's like 7'3". He needs to play more back to the basket and all this stuff. He doesn't need to be a 3-point shooter. The guy's so big.
Yeah. That's kind of my pick, my like beef with him too. I'd like to see him a little more back to the basket, but he does have a sweet shot for a 7-footer.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. So would Porzingis be your pick here, or
No, poor Zingod, yeah. No, I'm gonna go CJ. I think CJ is kind of that peanut butter and jelly, or the jelly to the peanut butter that Dame needs. I think he really picks it up. Like we mentioned earlier, though, he didn't have as great of a year this year, but I think he really plays that second role well. He's not a star per se. He doesn't need the spotlight. And, Dame's always trusted him. So that's big for me. In big moments, he's always said CJ can handle it too. So
yeah, I'll go
there's
CJ as well.
there's no real like budding,
Yeah.
because a couple of these guys like Westbrook, you could make the argument has too big of an ego to be a sidekick. AD, is he really a sidekick, or is he, just kind of a 1A or a 1B to a 1A with LeBron? So
Yeah. I'll go CJ as well. I think you make a good point. I think Portland too is just like the right fit for both of them.
yeah,
Like it just feels like Portland, and
yeah,
it's one of these things where I don't know. I'll go CJ as well. There's a lot of good options. I don't know about Middleton. It's really hard for me. Like it feels like Giannis is kind of the one-man show, and Middleton can kind of fade out in the playoffs every once in a while.
it was hard for me to find like one in the East. That's kind of why I had to put him in there. Is there's not a lot of like real duos in the East.
There not really is, no.
Yeah.
Or there isn't really. I mean, yeah, there really isn't. That's hard. Duos in the Eastern Conference is difficult. Yeah. Man, the East is a mess. I think that's going to be a pretty common theme as we go through this podcast here, is that we're just going to be frustrated. The
East needs some love. They do.
For sure. Most likely to make you laugh: Embiid, Giannis, Robin Lopez, and Shaq. I would put Kenny in here as well, and Charles from the NBA on TNT crew. I think this is an easy decision, but who is it for you?
Yeah, it's an easy decision. I mean, it's Shaq and Charles. I'd like to stick with the player, but those two guys, man, they get me every time. Those two are too funny for me. But if I had to pick a player, I'd probably go with Embiid, oddly, just because that he's just such a troll. He just loves to make fun of people and do weird stuff that most guys wouldn't do. So if I had to pick a player, I guess I'd go Embiid.
I put the Raptors too, man. The Raptors have some fun with the scarves.
Yeah.
I made a bet with Brandon. He's a Raptors fan, that I would have to wear a scarf on the show if the Raptors win the title. I have a scarf in my house, so if they do.
Safe.
What? Sorry.
I think you're safe. I don't think you're going to have to be wearing a scarf.
I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I'll go Shaq and Charles as well. Excuse me. Those two are fun. Shaq is even fun like off the set. He's just a fun guy. This NBA on TNT crew is just wild. One of the things that I love about Charles Barkley is that he can say anything and not get fired. Yeah. He's the only, he is legitimately the only guy in like in sports media history, that he could say whatever he wants on broadcast television and be safe.
Literally, I've seen some like reruns of old NBA and TNT, and he said some pretty like borderline stuff that I'm like, wow, he said that on TV.
It's really weird. Like he's the only guy that can say whatever he wants and he's good.
It's true.
It's so weird. I don't know how I can carve that place out in the business. I don't think anyone could ever carve that out.
I don't think anyone but him could.
Yeah. And we're doing start bench cut. All right. So start bench cut, 2020 best, Giannis, LeBron, or Kawhi. Interesting picks here for you, but what's your start bench cut here?
I'm gonna have to cut Giannis, start LeBron, and bench Kawhi.
Wow. I'll start LeBron again. Come on. You guys will get to know me better and realize that I'm LeBron biased, like heavy. Ridiculous. It's pretty dumb. This is the only thing I'll ever try to be biased on in the show is LeBron. I'm going to try my best to just have that be my sort of bias area is LeBron James, and that's it. I'll start LeBron. I'll bench Giannis, and I'll cut Kawhi. Kawhi didn't play enough for me this year.
That's I don't know. I just can't cut Kawhi. That performance he put on last year.
Yeah. But again, we're talking 2020 best. This isn't career.
I know, but if we're playing right now, I'm sure he could lock someone up.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's one of the few two-way guys left.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, rising stars of 2020. We got Tatum, Doncic, and Zion. All right. Do you want to go first? I mean,
I'll
I
let
think
you go first on this one.
Yeah, I think we both know who we're both going to start. I think it's Luka.
Yeah,
Luka had a good case for most improved this year.
he did.
Actually, I'll have you talk about Luka a bit. I mean, I think the biggest thing with Luka this year is just his dramatic improvement. Like he was great last year, but this year, man, he was on another level.
See, I feel like he could have been this good last year if he had some of the pieces that he did. I think the Mavs organization did a really good job of surrounding him with like some really good shooters. Seth Curry, Kristaps is a big that shoots really well. A guy that doesn't get talked a lot about on that Mavs team is Dorian Finney-Smith, who's become a really good 3-and-D player.
Nice piece for them for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they did a really good job of surrounding him with shooters. Tim Hardaway Jr. Really stepped up this year and had a really solid year behind the scenes. But Luka, I think, just needed a full year to kind of get in NBA shape. I think more or less was the big thing for him. I know coming into the draft, I was not high on him, and you told me this guy's going to be good. And
I will always have that over you.
I know you always hold that one on me, but
always.
I was a little bit worried about what kind of shape he was in, and if his kind of like slow, fast ability would be able to translate. But he did a really good job.
I mean, with Luka, man, I was on him like 2 years before he got drafted. I mean, I knew he was going to be great, and not a lot of people believe me, but I believed the hype pretty early on. As you did with the next guy on this list, Jason Tatum. You were high on him pretty early as well.
Yeah, that was one guy I've been hearing about him since high school. So that to me was probably the Doncic for you, where I was really high on. And, you know, that's a guy to me that really stepped up these last couple of years. And I think Kyrie gone allowed him to grow even more. So
I mean, I think Tatum after the All-Star break, I mean, he's the guy there, right? It's not Kemba, it's him.
Outside of Giannis, I think he's the second best player in the East. I don't know
probably.
how you feel about that.
Yeah, probably.
So
I have a tough time with these.
That says quite a bit, you know, for a guy to make that kind of jump. So
yeah, for sure. So it's gonna be start Doncic, bench Tatum, and of course we talked about Zion early. I'll cut Zion, even though it pains me. But yeah, I'm a Zion guy too.
As much as it pains me, I would cut Tatum here, and I'd start Doncic and bench Zion.
I think Zion after 1 year, you want to see him on a full year being healthy. before you start him or bench him, I think, in this
That's
instance.
fair. I
Um,
love Tatum too, so you could probably talk me into that.
all time. So this is all time. We got LeBron, Michael Jordan. Who? By the way, what was your thought on the Jordan documentary? I don't think we had a full discussion on the documentary, but
It
just real
was
quick.
really, really good.
Yeah.
Really, really well done. Really interesting. I hadn't seen that kind of insight to that type of team. Also, to be fair, I haven't done a whole lot of like research on that, that Bulls dynasty. So it was good for me to get a little bit more of insight into, some of the decisions that were being made in the front office because
Hmm.
I had no idea, Jerry Krause and all that kind of stuff that was going on.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think Brandon and I are media and communications majors, right? And so when we were talking about the documentary, because me and him were watching it pretty heavily, we were talking about it more in the sense of the filmmaking perspective, in the sense of how it's actually made. You know how they jump from one year to another year and those transitions. I thought that was incredible. Just like
to me that was the one problem I had with it is I felt
Mhm.
like at some points it was a little bit hard to follow because you were jumping like 5 years at a time. It was like
It's
back forth, back forth. That's the one thing I know it does keep you a little bit more intrigued, but it's a little bit harder to piece it together.
right. And I mean this was a common complaint, but if you look at it from a documentary filmmaking perspective, that that made the story to me easier to follow. And talking about different players, like there was the Rodman episode, the Pippen episode, the Steve Kerr episode, right? To have these really interesting transitions of this one year to this year and to really talk about the player. They wouldn't have been able to talk about these individual players in that same way if that element wasn't in there, I don't think.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah. So I'll let you go all time here. LeBron, Michael Jordan, of course. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant and Gianna as well. So
Yeah,
all
I
time.
think this is one where you and me are gonna differ because I know you have an effect or
You're gonna be
affinity for
surprised at my
LeBron.
picks here. You're
Am
gonna be
I?
surprised.
Oh. I'm gonna go start MJ and bench Kobe and cut LeBron.
Okay, I'm gonna go start MJ, bench LeBron, and cut Kobe. Um, why would Kobe be a bench for you?
To me, I value Kobe's mentality and kind of leadership. Not that LeBron doesn't show that, but I just feel like the clutchness, like the go to, the killer instinct that Kobe had, I value more over than LeBron's questionable at best moments, where, towards late in games, it doesn't seem like he wants to be the guy.
Hmm.
So that's why if I'm going, it's hard to say. I mean, you could go either way with these, but LeBron's physical stature is hard for me to argue, but just that killer instinct that Kobe had, I think him and MJ paired would be,
Yeah.
a nightmare.
I mean, they're
I mean,
basically the same player if you look at mannerisms and all these other pieces.
similar, yeah. Kobe has a little bit better 3-point shot later on in his career and stuff, but yeah,
Hmm. MJ was never, a 3-point guy.
yeah.
Here's the thing with the documentary. As a LeBron guy, and see, this is why I think the documentary was actually important for MJ's career. This is like it's a perfect representation of that time period to understand that time period, what happened, why, because the main argument for why he's the GOAT over LeBron is simple. It's not what he did on the court, right? It really isn't. It's about sort of the Be Like Mike Gatorade documentaries. It's the shoes. I know you can speak more obviously to the shoes as well, and I know we'll probably do some shoe segments as we go through this podcast. But I mean, I think that it is that. It's not the court stuff necessarily. It's not like the 6 for 6 stuff, which again, I don't know about the whole 6 for 6 thing now after watching the documentary, 95 or whatever year that was. But it is the Be Like Mike, the Jordan or the Jordan shoe brand, because it was all Converse back in those days, and then Gatorade. That's what it really was. It was like
It
he
was
changed the
also
culture.
the globalization that he
Right.
brought along with it.
Right. And that to me is kind of what sets them apart. It's not the on court stuff necessarily. It's kind of what he did for the game.
I I agree, but I think LeBron has kind of piggybacked off of what MJ has done. More so than Kobe did or anyone else has. I think he's piggybacked off it a little bit more. But to me that's why I'm leaning a little bit more towards um MJ instead of LeBron playing wise is because of the titles. To me, it is a little bit more of the play.
hmm I think with LeBron, by the end of his career, it's going to be tough to deny the playing because it's going to be especially if he wins one with the Lakers, I think it's going to be tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, that will be the one where it's like, I think that finally puts him in that same conversation.
And obviously, this is going to be one of those years, unfortunately, where if the Lakers win, as we talked about, there could be some people saying, this was a weird year, whatever. I guess that will hurt him legacy-wise to some degree. But even then, I think by the end of his career, if you just look at the totality, if he wins one this year or even next year with the Lakers, it's going to be tough
Yeah,
to really deny the playing piece. All-time shooter, we got Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, and Steph Curry. This is a good list, man.
it
It's a
is.
good
This is
start
a,
bank cut
this is
list.
a tough one. Um, I'm gonna go off personal bias though, and I'm gonna go start Ray Allen just because
Mm.
that's who I grew up idolizing. That was my guy. I'm gonna bench Reggie because I think he was the first one to really do it, and then I'm gonna have to cut Steph Curry, even though he's got the numbers.
Do
I
you
think
feel
just
this?
based off pure shooter, I think those other guys were better. Steph Curry is better off the dribble, but I think pure shooting,
Mhm.
those guys have a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, I want to ask this question. I mean, I'll add Reggie Miller into this, but I thought about this about Ray Allen a lot as I've watched some old footage of him during the quarantine.
Hmm.
It's almost like if Ray Allen was placed in the league today, let's say he was drafted in like 2015. Maybe you feel the same way about Reggie, but let's say they were both drafted in 2015. Their careers would be much different
Yeah,
because
a
they
whole
would,
lot.
I mean, because they would be like, this is the three ball era. This would be so much better for their careers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's why, to me, I can't hold the numbers of Steph Curry that much higher because I feel like, and don't get me wrong, Steph Curry has done his more than fair share of getting the game to that point. But if these guys played in today's NBA, I feel like the numbers would be a lot greater.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to start Steph. I think, simply put, he's in the Hall of Fame not just because of the championships. It's because he changed the league. I mean, you can probably speak to this more than I can. I mean, you coach. I mean, you coach. Boys and girls club and all that stuff. How many times did you come into practice and see a person with probably more of a center's body shooting threes?
Yeah, it drives me insane. I just had my AAU tryouts, and stuff, and the amount of kids that come in and think they're Steph Curry is just it kills you as a coach because none of them can shoot. So they all think they can shoot, but they can't shoot,
I'm one
especially
of
at a
those
young
people, though.
age. You know what I mean? You get some of these little kids out there and they think they can shoot threes and they barely get it up to the rim. It's like, okay, let's settle down. Let's get back to the layup lines, but it's
See,
fun.
See, here's the thing, though. For me, I'm kind of like that too, where I'm more of a defensive player personally, because I'm not a great shooter, like at all. I suck, but I'm not like as tall as like a center's body or whatever. I'm more of like a point guard body, but still, it's like I've kind of bumped into that too, of like let's just shoot threes all the time. But you're
Yeah.
more old school, aren't you? Though you like sort of the back to the basket. Your system is a little bit more old school than most. You think?
Yeah, what I like to run is I like to have one pure shooter on the floor, and I do like to have a little bit more of a back to the back center, and I do like a stretch four though.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this before to you. I don't know if I've said it on the pod though, but my ideal team is basically based off of the '04 Pistons,
Yeah,
'05
we've talked
Pistons.
about this before.
Yeah, where you have a rebounding center. You got Rasheed Wallace as your four who can space it out a little bit, but he's not, unable to rebound. And then you have Rip Hamilton, who is also the other guy who I wanted to include in this list, but I just couldn't because of the talent. But him and Ray Allen were the guys I idolized growing up just because of their shooting. So Rip Hamilton as your pure shooter and, so on.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, that's kind of where I lean as far as what an ideal setup would be for me.
Mm-hmm. All-time bigs, we have Shaq, Kareem, and Bill Russell. You can go first on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go start Shaq, bench Kareem, and as much as I want to put Bill Russell in there for his legacy, I just think the way Kareem and Shaq kind of transcended that position is hard for me to leave out. So I'll cut Bill Russell.
Yeah, I think with Kareem, there's something about Kareem now as I've researched again, with the quarantine, we're looking more at, back in the day basketball, what that was like, how basketball has changed. And I think in learning and understanding that more throughout the year, I've gained more respect for Kareem
Yeah,
as a player.
definitely.
Because I mean, you start to really understand his impact to a much higher degree than I normally would. Um,
Yeah,
and for that, I'll start Kareem, I'll bench Shaq, and I'll cut Bill Russell. I think Kareem also had an incredible college career. I think most people would agree that Kareem is the college GOAT.
yeah.
Um, or
Him,
that
him
weird
or
ESPN poll that
him
happened.
or Bill Walton.
Yep. All right. Finally, all-time handles. We got Kyrie, Jason Williams, and Allen Iverson.
Yeah, this is another tough list for me. Um, I'm gonna start Allen Iverson, bench Kyrie, and unfortunately, I have to cut Jason Williams, even though I think he was really exciting to watch with some of the moves that he could put
Yeah.
on. But Kyrie with the Sham God and all those kind of moves that he's displayed recently has
Hmm.
really
Yeah.
made this list difficult.
And let's talk about the pieces of the dribbling, right? Because looking at the history of basketball, I think handles has become such a now obviously it's a huge part of the game. Way back in the day, it wasn't as much.
Yeah.
That being added in such a big part of the league actually changed the league tremendously as we hit the 80s and 90s especially.
Yeah, I think that came with the globalization of the game too. I think you get a little more of that street ball feel. It makes it a little more exciting for fans. When Jason Williams used to do that move where he'd throw it behind his back and then hit it with his elbow, and have it go the other way. Moves like that, it's fun to watch. Allen Iverson's crossover, was deadly. Like I've mentioned Kyrie recently with some of the moves he's displayed. It's becoming more and more exciting to watch the more you can do with the ball. Also, I do have to say though, with the advancement in some of these dribbling moves and stuff, you do start to see a little bit more traveling and stuff like that in the NBA, which is
Harden.
becoming a little bit more of a problem. Yeah, with Harden, step back moves and stuff like that. So it makes it exciting, but it also is a little bit frustrating when it gets to the point where it's taking aspects of the game away.
Yeah. I'll go Allen Iverson, Kyrie, and Jason Williams. That's my order. Start, bench, cut. Cool stuff, man. This is we'll try to do this more often. We'll do some more games and stuff like that we see from different shows, kind of put our own spin on it. But this is fun too. And we also got to talk about individual players as well.
Yeah, this was really cool, and yeah, and the games are a fun little end piece to this kind of NBA segment. So
Yeah. All right, and that's it. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with Shane and Brandon as we always come in. But again, 2 pods a week with Cole and then with Cole and me, and then of course with Shane and Brandon. And we'll try to get more content out throughout the week as we did starting on Monday. So definitely be sure to enjoy that and follow all of our socials. You can follow UWave on Instagram. We've done a bunch of work on there over the last week. Follow us on Twitter at @HattrickUWave. Make sure to follow Cole and I on Facebook as we'll post, or as I will post more stuff on there, and you'll see it on his page and my page as well, and Brandon and Shane. So working more on the social media side, of course. So share, like our stuff, and just enjoy our content because we're going to try to put out more as we go along. But thank you for joining me today, Cole. This was fun, and we'll be back on next week.
yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I hope everyone stays tuned. I got a few more creative little ideas that we can sprinkle in the show to spice it up a little bit. So we'll get some good content out there for you. And thanks again, Robert, for having me on the show. It was fun.
All right. And we will see you all next week. I'll see you tomorrow, and you'll see Cole and I again next week. And then, of course, Shane and Brandon, as always. So we'll be on again, or I'll be on again tomorrow. But have a great day, everybody, and I will see you